you get old, you don't remember these things.
Okay.
Perfect, Bob.
Yeah. So
Sorry, Ted.
no problem. So we loaded up Sunday morning the 19th. We were going to go up a day early, and so we took off from the BN1. We got about 3 miles from the house, and I hadn't driven it all in the spring. It's had other things going on, but it's always been a super running, reliable car, but not that morning. So we got going along, and all of a sudden it would just cut out, just like a snap of a finger, and it would like die, and then it would pick up and go again. And we'd go like a quarter of a mile. It would do the same thing over again. And then it did the same thing a third time. And then the fourth time it did it, there was a big backfire. And I said, we got 2 hours to go. I don't think I'm going to try to make it with this. So we turned around, went home, got home okay. It seemed to run okay going home. Put it in the garage, popped the hood, looked for any falling off wires or something like that. Couldn't see anything. So it was off we went with the BJ9. It made for some interesting conversation with all the experts up in Simsbury, and we all pretty much decided that it was an electrical problem, which I was pretty sure it was, but just what was the electrical problem? And the general consensus by many of the folks who I see right here was probably the coil. So when I got home, that's the first thing I went for was the coil. When I got home, I couldn't even get it to start at all. It was just, wouldn't get to start. So I did have a brand new Lucas Sports Grill, just like what was on the car. I put it on, started right up, and I'm thinking, got it. So I said, double check. I put the old coil back on, wouldn't start. So I'm thinking really good. Then I put the new coil back on, and it wouldn't start again. It was the last time it started.
The old one back on.
Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah. So that's where I was without any spark. Couldn't get the engine to run for about a day, and kept tinkering with it. So I was pretty sure I didn't have any spark, but I have a Protronics on it. And that's why I wanted to mention this, because we always talk, not always, but some of the calls about what do you do if the Protronic dies, and should you carry a spare or whatever. So I wanted to test the Protronic because I was really interested, a lot from our discussions on it. So I went to Protronics, and it wasn't like a really simple test that they could give you to tell you if you're on the road, something's funky, is my Protronics dying on me or whatever. So then I went to YouTube, and I got 3 videos, and the first 2 showed you how guys who set them up on a bench test off the car to see if the Protronics was any good. And then the third one showed you how you could, very simple, with a 12-volt test light, test the Protronics on the car. And it was set up by Bug-Eye Guy. So I give him credit for that. So I went and set up the little test. You just basically hook it up in parallel to, I think it was the ground circuit, and then roll the car back and forth and look for the 12-volt light to come on, which my light never came on. So no matter how far I rolled it, so I was pretty sure that the Protronics was toast. And it's been on the car since I bought it, so I don't know how old it is, but I've only had the car 14 years. But anyway, so I do have a spare distributor, and I took the base plate out, and I had an extra set of points and whatever, put it all on the car, and I still didn't have any spark at the points, because I figured once I got spark at the points, I'm home free, because I know how to deal with that. I've done this for years. No spark at the points. So I checked the wiring, and that's another thing. If you carry a spare base plate and points and stuff, the wires just don't unhook and hook up again. You may have to do a little finagling with your wires. So if you're going to do that, then try it out before you go on the road, and if that's your backup plan. So anyway, I had to change some of the wiring, and I wasn't getting any spark at the points. So I with my 12-volt test light, I had spark I had voltage coming into the coil, going out of the coil to the breaker side, and into the side of the distributor where that one little fitting is, but nothing to the points. Well, I go, well, what's in there? Well, there's that one little low tension lead that they're pretty famous for breaking at times, and I couldn't get anything on the other side of that. So I said, aha, maybe this. So I took it out, and it actually fell apart in my hands. So I knew that was it. fortunately, I had a spare, and I put that in, and then I got spark, and that was so basically starting to get running. And that's what it was. It was the period the Petronics died, and I got kind of bamboozled there by a defective or worn out old part, and glad I had a backup.
Yeah.
So in my trying to get things running, I start to shift around the distributor timing, and I think I got things I definitely got things a little out of whack. But I had put some magic marker marks on the side of the distributor and the side of the head that helped me get back in the ballpark to run. But so my question is to anybody who's really familiar with working on 104s is the way you normally time them, like the manual says, the factory book, which I have one, is static, set at a top dead center and get your point set up, and then you rotate it to the high level, high part of the cam. But I wanted to do something because the engine's been built up a bit with a different head and cam. I wanted to see if I could set it up with a timing light, but there ain't no room under that hood to try to work with a timing light unless there's some tricks. So is static the way to go? In which I've done that with cars many times before, but I just like to do the best I can for my Healey. So if anybody has any tricks or advice, ears are open. So Michael.
Mike Salter, I saw you
that's the way
smiling.
There you go.
Okay. Ignition timing is one of my favorite subjects, so get a beer. Well, first off, if your distributor is a standard distributor, then it advances a specific number of degrees depending upon the RPM of the engine or the distributor. So if you're timing the engine statically and you know what the advance of the distributor is, it's really no different to timing it with the timing light.
Okay.
So put that another way. When you're timing with a timing light and you are at 2,500 RPM and you know that the distributor advances 26 degrees, the maximum at 2,500 RPM, then you're really doing the same thing, if you follow what I mean. I always do my engines statically, always statically, because the distributor is changing the timing as changing the advance as the engine speeds up and slows down. You never can be quite sure how much advance the distributor is giving you when you're doing the timing. Plus, you've also got to take into account the vacuum capsule unless you have that disconnected.
Okay.
So, step back. The timing for 100, I think, is
6 degrees before top dead center.
6 degrees before top dead center. Static.
Yes. Yeah.
So what you do is you take the diameter of the pulley at the front, the timing, the sprocket, the V-belt pulley.
Yeah.
And you see there's a hole in it, and a 100, little hole.
I haven't found that yet.
Haven't found that yet. Well, it's there. It's
Okay.
really well hidden, but it is there.
Okay.
So what that indicates is that when that hole is opposite the little arrow that's pressed into the timing cover,
yeah,
the engine is at top dead center.
Okay.
That's the theory.
Okay.
And it usually isn't too far out. So then if you want 6 degrees, you take 360 degrees, 60 degrees, 6 degrees over 360 degrees, and you divide that into the circumference of the pulley, and it gives you a distance. And I think on 100, it's 5/8 of an inch from memory. Okay, so 6 degrees is 5/8 of an inch on the rim of the pulley.
Okay.
So you want your static point, that little hole, to be 5/8 of an inch before the arrow when the point's open.
Okay.
That clear?
Yep. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
But moving on. Ignition, changing the ignition because you have made modifications to the engine. That's a real a real tiger country. When they make these distributors and when they tune these engines in the factory, they're done on a dynamometer. And it's very, very carefully done. And there are a lot of factors involved. But one of the major factors is detonation. Detonation you cannot always hear when an engine's running, particularly if you're driving along the road, but it can be destroying your engine as you drive. And it really can. And 12,000 miles later, you take the engine apart, the top rings are all broken. Why are the top rings all broken? I mean, I put this thing together perfectly. Very often it's detonation, or there are burn marks in the side of the pistons, or the gudgeon pins are loose, or your rod bearings are starting to rattle, or you've broken a crankshaft. Those are all things that can happen when the engine's detonating. So trying to tune an engine, you tune an engine, make changes to the compression ratio and the fuel mixture and all this stuff and the cam, and then you, by ear, try to set the timing accurately, you're kidding yourself. You'll never get it right. It's done on a dynamometer. They have knock sensors on the engine, and they're listening for detonation. And they take they put the thing at full throttle, 1500 RPM. They advance the timing, and still they feel knock in the engine. Then they retard it a little bit, and that's the mark for that RPM. And they do that at every 100 RPM as they accelerate the engine on the dynamometer at full throttle.
Wow.
So it's not as easy just twiddling the distributor. That sounds right. End of lecture.
Okay. So I'm
So
happy with
what's the
static, and that's
recommendation,
how
though, Michael? Geez.
It's complicated.
I set it up with statically from top dead center, and it seems to be running just fine. But I just wanted to ask that, and I've done static on cars many times before. But if there's a better way of doing it, I just wanted to know it, because the engine has a little bit of work done on it, very similar to Peter's actually. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Michael.
You're welcome.
Hey, Peter, that engine you have up there, you took a
Yep.
picture of the pulley, shows that little dot pretty good.
Okay, yeah. Ted, I'll take a picture of that. You know, we've got that motor that we have for sale. So if anyone's interested in a great 100 motor ready for a rebuild, it's Ted. But we're looking to sell that. So if anyone's interested, let us know. $1,500.
Good deal.
Tomorrow morning, I'm looking for that dot.
Okay, I'll take a picture of that on that pulley. It's sitting on an engine stand right now, Ted.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything you want to add regarding timing? Okay. Martin. Martin's got a BJ8, as we're all fully aware, and he's going through some fuel starvation issues that he thinks he's getting some misfires. So Martin, you want to give us a little more background to what your challenge is right now with your BJ8? Martin, you still with us?
Okay,
Oh, there you are. There, you're up top.
yeah, I have a 66 BJ8 with 2-inch SUs that I had rebuilt over the winter, and that had loose throttle shafts. That was rebushed. I put them on the car, and actually, thanks to Michael Salter about putting on the chokes, I used some tiny bicycle wrenches to get the nuts on the choke mount, which was really something else to do. Anyway, I got the carbs on, I got the gas set up and everything, started the car, and it really didn't run well. I had a lot of misfires, and I couldn't quite figure it out where it was coming from. And to give you a history on this car, I've owned it since, well, 30 years or more. And
You were
it's never
young and
really
good looking when you had the car, right, Martin?
I had hair. But it never really ran perfectly. I could never get it to run like other Healeys, and I never really knew what it was. And so I started going through it, and the spark wasn't so good. I replaced the coil, the wires, the cap, the rotor, the condenser, and the spark got better. However, it still wasn't running right. And I did the timing, like you say. And now I started looking into fuel starvation. The problem was the car would start and it would purr. It would actually run absolutely perfectly at idle. I take it out and drive it. And it would drive, but if I put my foot into the gas, it would cough and stall and lurch forward like no power. So I started looking at the fuel system, and I was running 2 fuel pumps. One was the Lucas in the back, which is probably 4 or 5 years old, as well as a Facet fuel pump under the front cross member. So I actually thought that I had fuel problems in the past, but the Facet fuel pump, even though it made it better, never really solved the problem. I have recoated, resealed the gas tank in the past 2 years. I took apart the intake to the gas, to the fuel pump, and there was a little brass screen there. It had a little bit of rust in it, not a lot of rust. I took a fuel filter out and had a fuel filter right in front of the carburetors. I took that off and eventually took the Facet pump off. And the car is running better, but it's still, I think, starving for gas. I don't know. So the last thing I did today was to take off I tried to put a wire down the intake or the feed in the gas tank, and I couldn't get the wire past the right angle. So I took the feed to the fuel pump and pushed air through there, thinking that the feed was clogged in the gas tank. And it wasn't. The gas bubbled freely. There was no back pressure. So I think that line's okay. I checked the entire fuel line from the back of the car to the front of the car. It's not crushed anywhere. And the gas freely comes out of the hose coming into the carburetors. Then I went online and did some research. And on one of the blogs, they stated that a BJ8 with twin SUs can only use a AUF 301 HP 319 pump. And my pump is an AZX 1307.
That's horse feathers.
Well, I was wondering that. I mean, that's what so
And you mentioned Lucas earlier, Martin. You're talking, you have an SU pump?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I have a Lucas.
Yeah.
No, I have an
SU.
SU pump.
Okay, I
SU.
just wanted,
So I have an SU AZX, it's a 301, AUF 301, AZX 1307 in the car. That's only 2 or 3 years old.
anyone have any thoughts for Martin and his fuel problem?
I don't know that it's a fuel
Well,
pump.
wait, let's, Michael's got his finger up.
Okay.
It's his index finger too, so.
Uh,
He wasn't telling you where to go, Martin.
the fact that you take a fuel line off at the carburetors and turn the pump on and you get fuel blip, 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 blip out of the fuel, out of that line, right? It would fill a cup in 25 seconds.
Right.
Right. We'll just have to think about that. If your car's running at 20 miles to the gallon, say 20 miles to the gallon, and you're doing 60 miles an hour, how much fuel is going to come, is the engine going to need in a minute? A little bit of arithmetic, but I can tell you it's nothing like half a cup, right? It's a lot less than a half a cup. So just from the very fact that you're getting fuel out of that line and it's delivering at a better than a half a cup in a half a minute, you've got enough fuel coming from the pump, right? So forget the pump, forget the gas tank, forget the fuel lines, forget the filters, look into the carburetors. Now, my first guess with you is that there are no vents on the float chambers. Right.
Why did you say that?
Your car has a banjo on the top nut of the float chambers.
Yeah.
And it has a black tube on it that goes down. Okay. You have to make sure that the washers on that are assembled correctly. My guess is that you are not venting the float chamber. That's just a guess, but that's what I.
Okay,
But the best way to test that is you get on the road, you drive hard until the car starts to falter and misbehave badly. You pop the clutch in and you turn the ignition off at the same time. You coast to a stop, and you take the tops off the float chambers. And the float chambers will probably be empty. And that's where you start looking.
interesting.
But
So
you don't have a delivery problem.
so to correct it, is it I know there's a funny washer there that's got like
Yeah, that's right. You got to make sure you got that right. There's a three cutout washer, as we used to call it, and there's an aluminum.
Right.
The aluminum washer goes on the top of the banjo, and the 3 cutout washer goes on the bottom of the banjo. Bob, you must have some thoughts on that.
I had a similar problem a few years ago. We did a restoration for a guy in Los Angeles, and he got the car for about a month, and then he complained that it would run for a few minutes and then die on him. And he'd had it to a shop in LA, and they told him that the timing chain had been put on incorrectly, and they wanted to strip the motor down, and they wanted $8,000 to do it, and they wanted me to cover the bill. And I said, well, I know damn well it wasn't put on incorrectly. So I said, leave it with me. So I got online and I got a cheap fare out to LA, and I flew out. And he lived up in the Hollywood Hills. I could have stayed there forever. But anyway, he lived up in the Hollywood Hills. And I got looking at this car, and yeah, it drove. And then it drove for a few minutes, and then it would cough and splutter. And you leave it a minute and start it, and it would do it again. And I looked and looked and looked, and those 2 plastic tubes that come off the top of the float balls were laying on the heat shield, and they had melted. And so they were pressurizing the float balls, and it wasn't getting any fuel. I pulled them off, and the problem went away. So yeah, that washer has to be on in the correct spot. It's that 3 cutout washer has to be under the banjo.
Is there a position for the 3 cutout, or can it be
No,
like
No,
just
you
anywhere.
put it on
Just
the
anywhere.
lid.
okay?
Under the banjo.
Under the banjo, yeah.
So actually, I loosened up both of those to get the gas line on, and actually, I loosened it up to get to the nuts to put the choke on. So I could have moved them. I mean, I didn't take it off.
No, if you
Well,
didn't
I'll
take
check
them
it.
off, you wouldn't move them.
Right. But the other line,
Do that test that I mentioned first. Drive
Right.
it till it's not running properly. Shut off the ignition so that the pump is not running.
yeah,
Put the clutch in, coast to a stop, take off the float chambers, and then you're diagnosing where the problem is. Then you know what to look for.
okay. And the symptom is also that it'll cruise along, and I can gain speed if I'm really gentle with the gas pedal. But as soon as I press it right down, it coughs and sputters and stalls.
Yeah, fuel starvation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting source of fuel starvation. I never would have thought of that. Thank you. I'll try it.
Great. Anything else, Martin?
Well, until I get it going.
Okay.
Well, the other thing that you might want to consider is that probably 75 or 80% of carburetor problems are electrical. And people tear carburetors apart and fuel tanks and systems, and it all boils down to some simple electrical fault.
Yeah. Well, I've kind of gone through the electric. I even tested the spark and everything. But so my other question is that the idea that I need this specific AUF 1319 is not correct.
No,
That's I thought they were all the same. So the 301s are all the same flow.
You know, again, I've never had a problem with a facet, Martin. And I've had problems with SUs. So,
Uh-huh.
but it sounds like your fuel's not the issue. Pump's not the issue. It sounds like it's in those banjos in at the carburetors, based on what both Bob and Michael have shared.
Well, let me ask another question. This is a positive ground car. What do you think of the Lucas solid state SUs, or the SU, I guess the SU solid state pumps? And do they make a positive ground one?
Yes, they do, and they're great. Yeah, they're very good. They last a lot longer than the ones with points. And the ones with points, the ones with points only last 100,000 miles or so. Then you've got to get into something else.
Am I going to live that long?
Gone by then, right?
The good news is I'll be dead.
That's right. But it doesn't sound like the fuel pump's your problem, Martin.
Well, good, because I didn't want to replace it.
Okay.
I have a question. Are you sure your carburetors are balanced properly?
Well, I think they are.
I think they're.
I mean, I tried.
A carburetor balance problem won't cause his symptoms.
Yeah, I put the little needles on. I went through that whole process.
Okay, you put the needles on the top. Okay.
Yeah, and revved it, and then tightened everything up.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean, I think it's doing this thing.
Okay.
I have a policy. Car repairs are 90% diagnosis and 10% work.
Yeah.
I think I can vouch for that in the last couple of days. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Dave Bevan, you want to talk about some of the challenges you're having? And by the way, Dave Bevan was the class winner for the BJ8s at Bristol. Carl J, who's also on, came in second place. So congratulations to Dave and Carl on their excellent results at the Bristol show on Saturday.
And congratulations to Peter, because he was a first place winner as well.
I just one of those little sprites, not a big car. I can't afford the money that you spend on your cars.
So yeah, all this discussion tonight is interesting. I've had some problems recently with the car running rough. Just so all you know, my car is quite new. It was a complete restoration. I'm a novice, so I love the forum here because I learn a lot. I'm listening. A lot of it's over my head, but the car has progressively started running. Whoop.
You probably got what, less than 500 miles on the complete restoration, right, Dave? You're on mute, Dave. Dave, you're on mute.
So, can you hear
You're
me?
back on.
Great. Something just happened to my computer. Anyway, no, I've got about maybe 1,500 miles on it.
Okay. Good.
Anyway, it's progressively becoming harder and harder to start. On the last call, some of you may have been on, I was talking, I had a problem with some dieseling. That seems to have sort of subsided. But the drive to Bristol was a 4-hour drive there, a 4-hour drive back. I've also since been on the track at Lime Rock, so I've run it pretty hard at times. But anyway, it's running more and more rough. I spoke with Mike at the restoration shop at Mark LeBlanc's this morning. He thought that because the engine was new and probably had been running initially, they had it running rich, that maybe it was the plugs. He suggested to change out the plugs, and Peter suggested to number them when they came out and look at them. I sent you a picture of them, Peter, today. They had some carbon buildup, but they were not bad. Put the new plugs in, still running real rough. Idle is extremely low, but it just bounces around like crazy. So late today, I actually went in and took a little sandpaper to the points, restarted it, and I had to quit working, but it seems like it was running better, although the idle is still low. I know how to kick that up a little bit on the carbs. They showed me how to do that and what to do. So that's basically what's going on with the car. But it's you know, I spoke with another gentleman. He thought it was maybe a fuel problem. It was a original gas tank that was you know, cleaned and then recoated. He said sometimes that coating can begin to come off. So
Heard that.
that's where I'm at.
And by looking at the spark plugs, Dave, I would say they look foul to me. And you sent me a text. I'm gonna have to email it so I can put this back on to so others can see it.
Okay.
Did someone else have a comment?
Yeah, you're running points, you said.
I am running points, yes.
I recently just undertook a fairly long trip, and I had to adjust my points 3 times during that trip. The plastic thingy that rubs on the cam,
Rubbing block.
so it was closing up the points gap, and I opened it up, and I usually open it up to about 16, 17 thou, more than the 15 that's recommended anyway. And it cures cured my poor running right away.
Oh, okay. Great.
But you'll find too that if the points are too close together, then you will get build up on them, and they won't work nearly as well.
Yeah, further to what Bob's saying, the thing that he's talking about is called a rubbing block, and originally they were made of phenolic. These days they're made of a nylon, I believe.
Yeah.
And they are not as durable as the original phenolic ones were. And so what happens as the points close up, your ignition timing retards. It gets later and later and later. You lose power, and all sorts of things start going wrong. So yeah, as Bob said, get that points gap correct, and you'll probably find the thing runs the way it did when you got it.
Great.
And I
I am
found
sharing a picture now with a picture of his plugs. Are those in the right order, Dave?
Yeah, left to right at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the bottom.
Okay.
And are those when did you take them out? Had the car been idling, or did you do a run and shutdown test? What was the deal?
It was cold.
It was cold and idling. It's not really relevant, honestly. If you really want to do a plug diagnosis, you drive the car, 2,500 RPM, and then you do what I said before. You shut it off, coast to a stop, pull the plugs out and look at them, because you let a car idle for 30 seconds, they start going black.
Okay,
It has to be as they were running.
got it.
That's a good point. Thanks, Michael.
the other thing that I found advantageous with the points with the rubbing block is that I just smear a little bit of high temperature grease on the cam, and that really seems to help.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely correct. That they called it. There was actually a special grease for that, I think, Bob, wasn't there originally?
I think there was at one time.
Yeah, yeah. But it makes a hell of a difference too. The
And Matt
difficulty
Easterbrooks, I see you're on. Matt shared with a number of us at Bristol about some special grease that his company was producing. Matt, I see you're on mute. But do you think that grease could be utilized on that rubbing block? Matt?
I'm in 2 instances. I have one on my computer and I got one on my
Okay,
phone.
thanks, Matt.
Yep. No, so that grease that I gave you was that is just a conductive grease. Now, for the grease on the rubbing block, you said, I honestly, I don't know the makeup or the look of it. So I'd have to take a deeper look, but the comment on the previous plastic being phenolic and the new being a nylon being softer and less durable, that is 100% accurate. You're never gonna get as tough as phenolic unless you go into like Kynar. Anyway, that's material science that you guys don't care about. The grease that I gave you is specifically for connectors, meaning maintaining
Okay.
electrical properties around electrical connections. Now you mentioned a high temperature grease that goes on there. I can look into that and see if my company has something that will work similarly. I just need to know kind of conditions, material specs, stuff like that to see if my company makes I work for Fuchs Lubricants.
Okay.
I
So what we're
can
talking
see
about
if
is
they
that
have
rubbing
it.
block on the cam lobe.
The original grease was described as a high temperature lithium grease.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of lithium greases. Let me do a quick Googling on here. What's the name of the thing? Rubbing block on a cam rubbing block?
A distributor cam.
And that's what opens and closes the points. So what Bob Yule was saying on his trip out west, he had to adjust his several times in order to keep his car running properly.
It's at about 1,500 times a minute.
Yeah, I see a lot of things for specific distributor cam, lubricant greases and whatnot. All right. Oh, okay, I see it. Interesting. Yeah, let me dig into this a little bit and see what I can't figure out. Because I mean, there's a lot of greases on the market, and if I look into some of the tech specs, I might be able to find something that'll work for you. Because it looks like now the distributor cam and the rubbing block, are those the same material, or is it metal on plastic?
The distributor cams is a chromed steel cam. And the rubbing blocks originally, as I said, were phenolic, and the current ones are nylon, or a type of nylon.
Yeah, so it's an aminic. Both wouldn't really have many issues for lithium grease, but no, I think let me look into that, and I'll get back to you guys on that. Give me a couple of days.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. So Matt's dad's in the process of getting his car restored at Mark LeBlanc's as well. So and Matt doesn't have a Healy yet, but he's actually looking for a Healy. So if anyone knows of a good Healy for sale in New England or the Mid-Atlantic states, Matt would love to hear from you. So thank you for that. So Bruce Olson, you had a question regarding convertible top. So by the way, Bruce Olson's also having his car worked at Mark LeBlanc. So a lot of work's being done up there at Mark's place. He's got a BJ7 with some incredible engineering that he's put into it. He's spoken to us before, and we've seen pictures when the car was in his shop and whatnot, but it's now up at Mark's. But he's getting ready for a convertible top, and he's got some questions regarding materials, and then whether it goes with the BJ7 top or possibly a later BJ8 top. Did I summarize that properly, Bruce?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at Moss Robbins tops, there are two part numbers for later BJ7s and BJ8s. And then if you look at the AJ Spares offering, they just have one for both BJ7s, BJ8s. It said something about zipper back. I didn't know if that was a change that happened somewhere in the BJ7s, or what was the difference? I have an earlier BJ7 and I didn't have a top on it. The top was cut off when I bought it, so I don't know what it looked like. So I'm just curious about that. Then the other question I had was, they have the two types, the canvas, they call it, AH Spares calls it a mohair. And then they have the Everfast vinyl, which is probably closer to the original, I would think. And I was wondering if people had experience with those two different kinds of tops, and, which obviously the canvas is a little more expensive. Mark said something about it might be more difficult to put the canvas top on than the Everfast, but I was curious if anybody's had experience with those two types of tops and what their thoughts are on those.
The the early BJ7 top, I don't know where the serial number cutoff was, but there was a cutoff.
Yeah.
Was quite different. There was no little rain gutter around the side windows, and the rear window was fastened in with clips that clipped up to the top rail.
I see.
The later top was very much a BJ8 top, and the same. They had the little guttering or eaves trough, if you like, over the windows, and they had a zip out rear window.
I see.
The Everflex top is much easier to install.
Oh, okay.
The mohair top looks nicer when it's done.
Right.
That's my 2 cents worth.
Okay, great.
But you know, the feature of having being able to zip out the rear window, you know, I do have that on my phase 1 BJ8. You know, it's a nice feature.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Carl J and Bob Britton, you got BJ7s. What type of tops do you have on your cars?
Pretty sure mine's the Everfast. And then I see here that the April of '63 was when they went with the zip fastener in place of the toggle. April of '63. My car was early. Mine was May of '62. But it does have the zip top. And as Peter says, it's handy.
yeah. Yeah, I guess H Bears doesn't even sell the earlier one. So
The later one was a considerable improvement. I think that's why they don't sell them.
right.
Yeah, and again, Bruce, the number of modifications you've made to your car. I mean, you don't have a concourse car, so
No.
it's beautiful. But I'd go with the more efficient later top if I were you.
Right.
Yeah, but Bruce, I have the zip out on my BJ7. I think you'd really want to do that. It's going to be more weatherproof.
Bruce,
I'm sorry, Peter, for being late.
Special color with your top too?
Yeah, I was gonna go.
It's
Well,
top on my
the car is a California sage color, so sort of a lighter green color. It's actually an Aston Martin color from that period, and so I'm gonna go with a dark green top to contrast that.
And what are you doing
going to
for
be
an
a
interior?
custom color.
The interior is going to be a lot of people go with cream. I've seen some other ones that have gone with cream interiors, and I'm not a big fan of the cream, but I'm going to go with a tan interior, but with dark green piping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for being late, Peter.
Yep, no problem, Richard. So, Bruce, any other questions?
No, that's it for tonight. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. So Richard's got a top question as well. Let me see if I can find your picture, Richard. Okay, here it is. Hopefully it will come up. Are you guys seeing that now? Richard's pointing to a finger on his top. Richard's got a BJ8. It's a British Racing Green BJ8. And Richard, what the stitching has come out? Is that what you do, Richard?
Yeah, it seems like when somebody was moving my car where I keep it stored, they put their hand on the plastic window and it broke the stitching for about 8 inches.
That's
So
the stitching. That's the stitching holding the zipper in. Is that correct?
That is correct. So I'm asking, is it possible to restitch it or on the car, or do I have to take it off?
Probably easier on the car, actually. But you do it by hand.
You do it by hand, and you have to, you don't have to, but it's a lot easier if you can line up the original holes that the thread made, and you just push the needle back and forth through those original holes.
When you do that from the inside, with where you're seeing the zipper, that's the best way to do that, Bob and Michael?
I would take the window, unzip the window and do it with the window out, so you can work from behind and in front, and standing at the back of the car working through the hole. I think that's how I would tackle it. Sound right, Bob?
Yeah, and you want to do it from the inside out, and then you get the end of the thread on the inside of the roof and not on the outside.
And I think you use a linen thread, if I'm not mistaken, which is a little hard to find these days, but it's very strong.
Yeah.
I was even thinking about using mass thread, you know, that you would use on sailing. Is that
probably be fine?
Okay. I thank you very much. Appreciate.
Great. Thanks, Richard.
An afternoon well spent.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that I think you have to anchor the two ends that are ripped somehow. Otherwise, it's going to rip some more.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there other questions this evening?
Peter, I have one. This is Rupert
Go ahead,
Richardson.
Rupert.
I thank you for the comments on the rough running cars earlier. When I pulled my car to storage this spring, it starts, it idles, but as soon as I try and give it any acceleration, as soon as I try and accelerate it all, it misfires, and it is obviously not happy. I was wondering whether I should start with the fuel side or whether I should start with the electrical side to investigate. From the discussion this evening, I'm thinking I should start with the fuel side, but open for would love to know where I should start. What do you guys think?
Well, what I suggested earlier, the test for driving it when it's misfiring badly, turning everything off and checking the float chamber levels, will almost certainly confirm whether it's electrical or fuel.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I was thinking
what model do you have?
It's a BJ8, it's 1965. Okay. So it starts fine, sounds like it's idling fine, but just as soon as I give it as soon as I want to go anywhere, it just doesn't go. So yeah, I can start with the fuel side, start with the float bowls and have a look at them first. That would make sense.
I should mention to people who are doing that test, one of the other things is that the BJ8 floats, like many of the floats, are made of brass and they're soldered together, and they are getting very, very old, and a lot of them have cracked around the solder, and they actually take on fuel and sink. And that will cause all sorts of running problems. So watch for that as well.
Got it. Excellent.
Yep.
I'll start there. Thank you.
Okay.
On the misfiring thing, I have a BN4. I picked up last fall. Dave Silverfight down at Bug Eye Guys did a lot of mechanical stuff on it. It was misfiring a little bit earlier this spring. He thought we should rebuild the carbs, which he did. He tweaked them, and everything seemed to be fine. I put about 250 miles on it over the past few weeks. Drove it down to British by the Sea, just ran like a clock. Driving back, I noticed I was low on fuel, and the gas I had in it was high test mobile that I'd filled the tank a couple times, and everything ran fine. I stopped at a Phillips station, filled it up with high test Phillips, and man, I had a real problem. A lot of problems, sputtering on acceleration. Once I got up and leveled off, it was fine. But so I did some research and found there's a lot of difference between premium gasolines in terms of additives. And I was wondering whether anybody else had problems what you use. Michael, I know a couple of sessions ago, you said you could throw anything in it. The octane doesn't matter because of the low compression ratio. But this obviously was a change of the gas that I was using.
Well, so I
You
think
ever notice a difference in brands, in all honesty?
as I mentioned on that, when we were talking about that earlier, one of the critical things for Healey's is the boiling point of the fuel. So if you get a gasoline that's got a high proportion of naphtha type liquid in it, it'll boil at a lower temperature. And that in a Healey can cause problems because the float chambers get very hot and the fuel can actually start boiling in the float chamber, and the car won't run with the fuel boiling in the float chamber. Low boiling point of gasoline not so much a problem these days because the fuel systems in modern cars are all pressurized and the fuel doesn't boil. But in our cars, because the fuel is at atmospheric pressure, the boiling point is becomes critical. So it probably was a difference in the boiling point of the gasoline between the two manufacturers.
I ran my entire trip.
Do you have a point now with where you can go back?
Sorry,
Go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say I ran my entire trip on 87 octane gas. I had absolutely no problem with it at all. The only thing I did notice was, I don't know what it's like in the eastern US, but out west, pretty much all of the premium gas was ethanol free, but there was some regular gas that was ethanol free as well. Now it was about 80 cents a gallon more money, but at one pump I went to, the regular gas with ethanol wasn't working, but the one without ethanol was. So I filled up with it, and I noticed a distinct difference in the running of the car.
What was the difference, Bob?
It just ran. It seemed to have more power. It ran smoother. Yeah, it just felt different. The whole thing felt different.
Do people put lead additive in their gasoline?
Not required.
No.
I don't know.
I could give you a
I've had no
25 minute,
problems.
I could give you a 25-minute lecture on that one as well.
In favor or against?
Against, it's not required.
Thank you.
One more question. I'm just getting used to this car. I noticed my mileage is about 16 and a half miles per gallon. Michael, you threw out 20. Yeah, what are people experiencing? This is 106.
I get 19. I got a BJ8. And actually, one of the questions you had on, taking a car out of storage and it not running well, that happened to me 3 years ago. And mice ate the electrical wires. So all I did is replace the spark plug wires. The car ran perfect after that.
I get nearly 30 miles to gallon out of my 100.
Yeah,
that's a force.
We ran. I was a little over 25.
But they're real gallons, not your American ones.
Well, that's
Peter, I have
good.
a question if we're done with that.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
So I finally have been able to spend some time on my car and I actually got it running yesterday. The
Good for
question
you.
yeah, it's only been 20 years, right?
Yeah.
What's another couple months? But the question I have is, I could not get it to start, so I took the tops of the carburetors off and took the the inside piece that holds the fuel needle. And I noticed there's a lot of black, looks like black carbon inside those. Is that normal?
It won't do any harm. It's pretty normal.
Okay. I mean, I think it's running rich anyway, so I didn't know whether that was some of it.
No, the
But-
rich side would be on the exhaust side after combustion.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And you guys were
So
mentioning
Rob, you
that,
got the car running now? Is that what you're saying? The car is running?
yes, stationary, but running, Peter.
Good.
It took a while. It took a while. I mean, I don't know what changed. I did what I think Bob had suggested, and Mike talked about it as well. As I made sure that fuel was spurting out of the line up by the first float bowl, but I still, and it was, you could see it was moving gas, but I still could not get the thing to start even with starter fluid. So then I took the, like I said, I took the tops off the carburetors, I took the tops off the float bowls, and I basically all I did was put a rag in there and soak up the old gas that was in the float bowls, put it all together, and then it fired up for some reason. But you guys had mentioned a 3-cut out washer underneath the banjo attachment on the top of the float bowl. Is that right?
Depends on the model.
BT7?
So you got how
You
many
have a BT7, Rob?
how many
Yes,
screws hold the float chamber top on? One
Just
bolt in the middle,
one.
one in the
Black-
middle, and it has the 3 cutouts on it.
So when I took that off, of course, that fell on the floor. And I haven't been able to find it. How critical is that piece? Because it's not leaking. I just tightened it back up, and maybe the copper or brass or something's enough to take up the slack.
And no, it's very critical because it allows the float chamber to vent. If you don't have that 3 cutout, the float chamber can't vent. So the engine definitely won't run right without that there.
Okay, so it's venting. Okay, I didn't understand that. So it's venting through that instead of the overflow pipe.
Well, that connects to the overflow pipe. The overflow pipe comes up through that banjo, and then getting down through the lid is through those small holes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But you've got the car inside, right? It's in your basement up in
Yeah, it's
Vermont.
in
Is that right?
the basement of my mother's house in Vermont. Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully you should be able to find that.
Yeah, there tends to be a little bit of an oil and grease slick under there, Peter, after sitting for 25 years. And it seems to be quite thick, probably transmission 90 weight or something. The only other question I had is, and I think I know the answer to this, but on the BT7, it looks like the cable that goes from the positive post on the battery to the solenoid in the boot goes through a vertical panel, and there's a hole in that. I think I'm correct with that, aren't I? The reason I'm asking is because there is a hole in mine, but it's all jagged and almost like it wore through the covering of the wire and sparked and stuff. But that is where it's supposed to go, hopefully through a grommet or something.
If it's touching steel there, that's dangerous. You need to get that corrected because you've got fuel vapors in there. Don't want a lot of sparks. I'm pretty sure that on those models they had a very special grommet assembly for that, where it went through the metal panel, which consisted of like a cup washer with a big split grommet in it. Am I right for the early 6-cylinder cars? As people remember?
Yeah.
Bob?
Yeah, it uses 2 of those grommets and metal flanges.
Yeah.
One in that panel and one in the bulkhead.
Oh, right. That's correct. Yes.
cable goes through goes through both.
Okay,
And when you put the cable through, you want to have it where you want it, and then you tighten up the screws in these triangular plates, and it squeezes the grommet will squeeze the cable and keep it in place.
okay, so it's not just the old typical grommet through the firewall, just a
No,
round.
these grommets are about I'd say a half an inch thick, like solid rubber with a split in them, so that
Okay.
you can push them over the cable.
Oh, okay,
They're available aftermarket, I believe. Is that right,
Oh, yeah.
Bob? Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
I have a question.
Okay.
Does anybody know anything about CAN bus communication systems? Oh dear. Thank
No.
you.
Sorry.
Peter, I have a question.
We do it. Go ahead, Jim.
I think somebody mentioned this in the past, but I need to replace the glass on a windscreen for a BJ8. Does anybody have or know of a company that can do that?
Yeah, have we done that?
I just had it done a few months ago.
Okay.
A gentleman down near Taunton, Mass, gave me a very good price on.
On our website?
Pardon me, Peter?
No, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
My
okay?
internet's, yeah, go ahead. My internet's broke.
Yeah, I just replaced my glass. Bob Britton had recommended that I check with Haggerty for the mass replacement, and sure enough, I was able to get it replaced. And the guy down in Taunton, Mass area, I have his number. He did it very short money. He did a great job too. I could forward it on to you if you're in the Massachusetts.
Yeah. I'm close to Taunton.
Yeah,
that
he
would be
did
real
a
help.
great job. Yeah, he was really did a good job. I was very happy with it. I could send you some pictures along with his information.
I would appreciate that. Now, did you have the glass or did he order the glass?
No,
for you?
I ordered the glass. I ordered the Pinkleton glass.
Right, that's what I was going to do.
The triplex stuff.
Yep.
It's kind of odd because I did the side glass as well on the doors, and they ended up putting the logo on the triplex up at the top corner, which is kind of weird because it's sort of like advertising for them, but it seems like an odd place to put the logo, you know?
Okay,
But the windshield, I put the Pinkleton stuff in.
all right. Did you get a gasket for them or did they have the
No,
gasket?
my gasket was okay.
Okay,
I used to work for them. It's Pilkington.
Pilkington.
yeah.
That's the proper way to say that.
With a New Zealand accent. Hey, Mike, do you want to send me that information and I'll put it up on our website?
Yeah, I'll look at see if I can find it this evening. If not, I'll get it off to you tomorrow.
Okay, that would
Thanks,
be
Mike. Yeah,
that would be great.
Be appreciated. Yeah.
Anything else, Jim?
No, that's it. The glass
Okay.
that was broken was from a windshield that had been removed from a BJ8 40 years ago. The guy bought the car to use it for a race car, took the windshield off and stored it. I bought it. It hadn't been used or hadn't been out in 40 years, was brand new. I installed it, took my car up, have it tuned up, left the garage, drove 20 miles in a stone, bing, right over the windshield,
no.
over the steering wheel. And the crack is now getting bigger, so it really needs replacement quick.
Yeah,
But the
absolutely.
frame is absolutely pristine.
Nice.
It's
Good.
nice. It's nice when you get a new windscreen because when my car was redone years ago, somebody must have had a grinder or a sander, and they ended up hitting the glass a little bit. So all I would ever look at was that scratch on the glass, and now it's just a completely
Yeah.
enjoyable experience to look out on a clear
Okay.
windscreen.
All right. Yeah, I think you had mentioned that before and I lost that note. So thanks for reminding me, and you get it to Peter and I'll get it from him.
Will do.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, can I have one more follow-up question?
Bristol, and Rick is about to go through a complete nut and bolt restoration on a Sprite. He's got a truckload full of parts and a body as well. So Rick has just joined us. Rick is now he's summering in Newport for a couple of months, but he actually lives in Tennessee. But he's joined he joined our club. He's going to be joining our meeting. So Rick, we're glad you've joined us. And I know you and I talked quite a bit on Saturday. Any Sprite questions that you may have of the group for tonight? Rick, we're not hearing you.
Yeah, where is it?
Is your volume up, Rick? You're not on mute, so it must be your volume on your device. You just went on mute, off mute. But we're not hearing you. Okay, well, again, welcome to the Austin-Healey of New England. Hopefully you've enjoyed tonight's discussions. So thank you that. Any other questions tonight? Matt Easterbrook, I saw you had your hand up earlier. Is there something you want to add?
Yeah, so I had a quick question. Now for the rubbing block and the temp and the cam, the distribution cam. What's the everything that I'm seeing? It's a high temp grease. Now, we talking more than 150, like more than 200 Celsius, or kind of around $1.75?
It's unlikely. It would go that high.
Perfect. Then I have a grease for it.
I would say it would unlikely to go up much above 100 C.
Okay. So, Pete, the samples that I gave you are technically a lower temperature fretting dielectric grease. There's another set of grease that is considered a higher temp grease. The stuff that you have is only good to about 135. We've got another set that goes up to 175 C that I think most, from everything that I've Googled so far, would most mimic a lot of the greases that are on the market. And I can get you, I don't know, maybe another good solid fistful or two of that grease in the same size packets I gave you on Saturday.
Okay, great. And then we'll share with any members who are interested.
I think you want to avoid. I think you want to avoid dielectric grease. Dielectric's conductive, correct?
No.
Oh, non-conductive.
Okay. Dielectrics.
I get them mixed up.
Okay, dielectrics are non-conductive. Those.
That's right.
Yep. This one specifically, it's a thicker grease, so it shouldn't have spin off. I got to double check two properties in one of the tests, but I'm pretty sure that's the one we want. If not, I've got one more in mind, but that's going to be a silicone PTFE, and I'm not certain you want to do that. A, because they're expensive, and B, because we're getting rid of PTFE anyway. So I think I have one in mind that I can get sent your way to try.
Okay, great. Appreciate that.
No.
Okay. So those of you who are in Wing 4, Dave Walsh is hosting a breakfast in New Bedford on the 19th. Dave, anything else you want to add as it relates to that? Or Bruce, anything you'd like to add for Wing 4?
Oh, thanks, Peter. Yeah, thanks. And thanks again to Dave for pulling this together. There's a restaurant he's identified that's, I guess, across the street from the Whaling Museum in New Bedford. And everything I've heard about it is it's a great venue. And I hope people will be able to fit it into their schedule. And that's, we'll go from there.
Great. Also let you know, we talked a little bit about Summit. So just make people aware, next year is the 50th anniversary of the Austin-Healey Club of New England. And a number of those who've been around for a bit are aware that all of our annual meets used to be on Cape Cod. So our plan for 2025 is we're going back to the Cape, and we will we're going to go back to Cape Cod, and it will be in September. So we're working that, and we will not conflict with Encounter, because I know Encounter is looking at event in September. I see. Rob Moore, did you have another question? Michael thought you may have another question.
I did have one just quick follow-up question, Peter.
Please.
The hard gas lines that go to and from the fuel pump on the BT7, are there attachment points for those underneath those jumper seats, or does just basically the rigidity of the pipe keep them in place?
Connection.
There's clips that hold it on to the frame. Is that what you're talking about, Rob?
Well, I can't see any attachment points on my car. There's no holes that I can see or anything where a clip would attach.
Not sure about the 6s, but on the 4s, there are actually a couple of steel tabs welded to that area, that box over the axle. They were just like steel strips, and you were meant to bend them to hold the line in place. They may be on the. I'm pretty sure they're on the 6s as well. Do you remember, Bob?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
All right. You're talking about the bulkhead over the axle, Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that type of tab, I think, in the boot, in the trunk, but I did not see them in the under the.
These
jump
are
seats.
on the other side of the boot wall.
Okay.
Right.
I'll take another look. Thank you.
Over the axle.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Now that is one thing that I had an issue with my Sprite when I first got it. Is it'd been sitting for a while, and that fuel line I cleaned it multiple times, never get it right. I ultimately replaced the fuel line, and it's now been running since 2020 or since 2001 without any problems. But when I first got the car, it died on me 5 times, and the issue was that hard line. I replaced the hard line, and it solved the problem over 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Peter, what was the problem with the hard line?
It was just full of crap, and I kept cleaning it out with all sorts of solvents and whatnot, and it just couldn't get it right. So I replaced it and put a new one in. It's been beautiful for 23 years.
Yeah, the stuff that came out of my line when I was pumping it into the glass jar looked like a fine red wine, Peter.
Yeah.
It was.
I hope you
I've
didn't
never
drink
seen
it.
gas that dark before.
Yeah, hopefully you didn't drink it.
Cabernet.
Yeah.
The other thing that holds that line in place is there's little clips that go into holes along the frame rail on the inside of the frame rail. They're little two-sided clips that push into the hole and clip onto that line and keep it up above the bottom of the frame rail.
Okay, thanks.
Called-
Yeah,
they're
I'll
called
take a closer look.
Yeah, hairpin clips, they're called.
Oh, okay.
And they're in 2 sizes. There is a size for the brake lines, and there's this different size for the fuel line, believe it or not.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen. I know the brake line ones you're talking about along the axle. So I'll take a closer look. Thank you.
Well, this is going parallel down the frame rails.
Right.
That's where they're discussing it, Rob. Not over the axle. Frame rails.
Okay.
And then comes up into the underside of the engine compartment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, those are in place. I'm talking about just the specific area under the jumper seats that's above the axle, where the line, primarily where the line goes from the gas tank to the pump. It just seems to be hanging loose and moving
Yeah,
around.
there's a little clip up on the top that's on the very top, right under the seats. on the edge that folds over and holds that line in place.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
But it's a tab that's been welded, yeah, at
Yeah, it's
factory.
a tab
Was
welded
on there.
in that you can
Yep.
bend over the pipe, and it may be missing. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was misunderstanding. I know what you're talking about now. I'll take a closer look. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or feedback for tonight?
I've got two, please.
Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, yeah, so mine, last year, so BJ8, last year, everything was running fine. Suddenly the speedo stopped dead. This year I finally figured out how to take the transmission tunnel cover off, and sure enough found that the right angle drive had snapped. Put a new one in with the proper spacer. Pulled and actually put a whole new cable and whole new cable assembly in, just because I happened to have one.
Okay.
And took out for a drive, and it's perfect for 7.5 miles, and then stopped. So a friend of mine does work on these cars, and he's just the first thing to do is disconnect the cable from the back of the speedo, and if the cable is turning, then it's probably the speedo. If the cable's not, it's something else. So sure enough, I did that, and by the way, I did take the speedo out and gave it a once over, and put an old cable on, put on a drill running in reverse, and it worked. So now same thing. The inner cable does not turn at all. And do these right angle drives fail right out of the box? Is there something I may have missed when I put it on? When I took the old one off, along with it came out of the gearbox, there was a brass fitting that it should actually live in the gearbox, wasn't part of the right angle drive, but it came out when I took the old right angle drive out, put it back in. It's got kind of a set screw that goes into a groove on that brass adapter plate, on that brass adapter tube, and say it worked perfectly for 7.5 miles. Is there anything else dire that I should expect, or is it just a piece that just failed out of the box before I take the whole stupid thing apart again?
Go ahead, Michael.
Three of those.
Yeah, there's a pretty common problem, actually. I don't know why it happens, but the odometer, the thing that counts the miles, they seize. I know not why, but they seize. And it takes a long time for it to seize, and eventually it locks up the speedometer and the cable breaks. And then by the time you've got the speedometer out of the car and everything's cooled down, it'll run again with a drill for a while. But it's almost always the odometer section of the speedo that has seized and is causing you a problem.
Oh, when I took it apart, I used an old cable and put on a drill in reverse, and the odometer and the trip meter and everything worked perfectly.
But how far?
I just like a few tenths of a mile.
Yeah, try it for 10 miles.
I just put on a drill.
Amazing. I have no idea why they do it, but they seem to seize after a distance. And I've had several do that. Typically BJ8s.
Okay.
Les, did you have something you want to add to that, Les Robert?
Yeah, with those right angle drives, I went through 3 of those from Moss within like a 6-month period, and they all failed. And then I found an old one that was the original kind of style, and I sent that out and got it rebuilt, and it's been good for years.
Yeah, what failed on mine is that the drive itself did not fail, but there's a short length of cable that's got a square in both ends about that long. And that part had actually failed, not the drive itself.
Oh, okay. What I was having was the little piece in the drive was breaking off.
Okay. Yeah. No. This was the shore length of essentially inner core cable that about that long, that went from the gearbox to the right angle drive, and so that's what I may do first is since I have figured out how to take the transmission tunnel cover off, may take a look and see if that had failed. But good point about the taking apart the speedo, put on a drill, put on reverse, and just let it go for a while. And
Well, Mike,
and
one of the other things, so you disconnect the speedometer, the line, and if you drive that, does that spin properly?
the well,
Cable?
when I'm driving, the
Not
cable
attached,
does,
not attached to the speedometer. Detach it and see if it moves, spins when you're driving.
it does not.
Okay.
It,
And the cable's not broken?
Not that I could tell. I'll pull it out again, but it's brand new. So which is no guarantee. But
Right.
I'll pull it out again. So that's the bizarre thing. And the next little annoyance I have is the overdrive. When I got the car about 2 years ago, it was never quite right in the head, as they say. When I'd be driving it, but high RPM, like 4,000 plus, and then when I hit the overdrive switch on the dash, it would drop down, 500, 600, 700, whatever, and then when I turned it off, it would come back up again, and then it stopped doing that. So it was suggested that until I really figured out, you don't need the overdrive. So what I did this spring is I finally lifted the car up and I changed the fluid in the gearbox. I ended up using the red line, and it's a good thing I did because only about a half gallon came out, and it should take almost a gallon, I think it was. And I pulled the filter that's on the back, and it was perfectly clean. And I realized that's something you don't have to do very often, but I did because I had it up and it worked. Filled it up and probably overfilled it a bit. Took the solenoid off and cleaned it, and especially cleaned the area because I think it grounds through the case of the solenoid, the little dome there, and made sure that there's a good solid ground from that through the screws that hold it to the frame, to the gearbox, and cleaned all the electrical connections with contact cleaner and like crocus cloth so they're bright and shiny, and doesn't seem to want to work. What happens is even with the overdrive off, when I go into third or fourth gear, I could hear a click, and it's down near my seat, and it sounds like the solenoid. When I go to third or fourth, the sounds like a solenoid's closing. And I was driving the other day and cruising not very fast, probably 60 or so, and I was turning 4,500 RPM, which is a bit high, it seemed. Hit the overdrive, went down, released the overdrive, and didn't come back up again. And I tried, popping or running clutch a few times and take it out of gear, and it appears to go out of overdrive because it's not in, but it's never been quite right. It also idles very high. Sometimes it can idle about 1,000, 800, 900, 1,000. Usually it's about 1,500. And what I was worrying about that is that it was the choke cables not fully releasing. Like when I put let the manual choke in, where the cable's fully retracting. So it's one person has suggested it may actually be a loose butterfly valve on one of the shafts on the carbs. So multiple questions. I don't know how many we can get answer here, but maybe just forgive my whining.
So Mike, is overdrive working now or not?
No, it worked once the other day when I was driving, but not consistently. When I got the car, it seemed to be running just fine. But it has been less and less reliable, and lately almost none.
Okay. Bob or Michael, any suggestions for Mike?
Do you have a driver's handbook by chance?
I do.
Okay. I suggest you read the section in the driver's handbook on operating the overdrive first, because it'll probably clarify a little bit for you, because it's a little bit more complicated than just turning it off and on with the switch. It has a throttle switch on it as well. Now, as to why it would only work very infrequently, essentially you're saying it never worked, and then suddenly you turned the switch on and it did work. Is that correct?
That's correct. Lately, last year it worked most of the time, and this time it wasn't working at all, and then the other day it did once.
There's an adjustment. There's adjustment on the side of the overdrive unit itself, which that adjustment determines how far the little hydraulic valve, the little ball valve, opens when you turn the switch on and energize the solenoid. I would hazard a guess that needs some adjustment, but it's not something to tackle unless you're really pretty careful about what you're doing, because you can easily burn out the overdrive solenoid.
Yeah, which I guess wisdom is knowing what you don't know and don't screw with it. So so if I'm saying one thing that's remotely wise, it's that.
Yeah, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Now, what was the other question you were asking about? The idle speed? Yeah. Whomever suggested that the throttle butterfly, you could have a loose butterfly in the throttle, is definitely very likely on the right track. It is a common problem. BJ8 again, right?
Yes, and
BJ8, they're very bad for it. There are two tiny little screws that hold the butterfly in position on the shaft, and they're meant to be spread at the back end when you've put them in and tightened them and centered the butterfly, but people don't spread them, or they don't tighten them enough, and they come loose, and the butterfly, as you drive, slips down in the shaft, and then it can't close all the way.
So essentially, they have to be peened over.
Yeah, well, not peened over. They just have to be split open at the back side. The screw has actually got a split in it, and you just split it open, and that locks it. So, and you can usually reuse them if you just, but again, you usually have to have the carburetors off to do that. So it's not an easy job.
Okay. Yeah.
Not 2
folks
minutes.
The folks who had mentioned that was Pete, you know them. They're the Healey guys down near Southampton, the UK. I've forgotten their name right now.
Berlin Services?
Sorry?
Berlin Services.
No.
You're not going to take the carburetors to them, are you?
Well, I could. I go there every once in a while. But yeah, they're the ones who they've actually stayed with you. They seem to know you.
Bill Rawls?
Yes, that's it.
Oh, okay. Bill Rawls Classic Cars. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's one of those chaps had mentioned it.
The real experts are Berlin Services in the UK. They took over the SU carburetor licensing, and there's nothing about SUs that they don't know.
Berlin is
BURLEN Services.
BURLEN.
Yep. Just look them up.
Where in the UK are they?
They're in the southwest somewhere, southwest of London somewhere. I can't remember.
Yeah, because I'm down in Southampton quite a bit.
Just look them up. They probably won't be far away from you. Nothing's that far away in England.
I know it. I walked across it once.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm there quite. We may have mentioned I'm rebuilding the Tiger Moth there, and it's just about ready to fly. So I'm there quite often.
That's a fun job.
Yeah, well, I'm doing with a checkbook while I was still working. So
not doing the major by yourself.
No. The engine was done by Bintech up in near Cambridgeshire. So it's really good. All right, yeah, that's that seems to be the main thing, but just another little weird thing that came up is that the turn signals work perfectly on the outside, and inside, left one and right one would operate just fine. For some reason, after I put the speedo back in, the turn signals outside would work perfectly, but inside they would flash in unison at half brightness, almost like a hazard lights. But externally they're fine, but internally just the indicator, rather than doing this, they're kind of doing that.
Good luck.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. Thanks. Thanks.
Those indicator lights, the little lights inside those things, they actually ground through the bulbs. So when the power is off the bulb, power from the power source goes through the indicator bulb and it grounds through the bulbs in the turn signals. And the reason is that if one blows, there's not enough current to light the light. So you can tell if you've got turn signals going out.
Okay.
Classic British engineering.
Well, you see it even on modern cars. Like if somebody's turning and their turn signal is going double the normal speed, that means one of the lights in the circuit, probably the front one, has gone out.
Done. Yeah, that's done with the flasher unit. But the British, in their infinite wisdom, decided they would try it another way.
And that's why if you want to go LED on the turn signals, you have to put ballast resistors, all sorts of stuff. So essentially,
Everything goes kitty wampus. Yeah.
Now these cars are positive ground. Yep. On my Spitfire, I change all the lights, the external lights, not the turn signal, just the running lights. I put it all LED. Are LEDs polarity sensitive? Can I change some of the brake lights and whatever to LED?
Well, they are polarity sensitive, yes.
Okay. So if I did want to, I'd have to get an LED
you can hook the LED up the other way, though. Well, you can hook one side of the LED, one side of the LED to ground. If it doesn't work, you hook the other side of the LED to ground. One way. They're a diode, so the current will only flow through one way.
Are the lights double contact, or how do you do that?
Okay, the bulbs, the outside of the bulb is the grounding circuit, is the ground.
Yeah.
And then there's two little terminals on the back side of the bulb, which is the power supply. But you can actually buy bulbs, I believe, that are positive ground LEDs. Is that right, Bob? Still have them?
You can buy bulbs that are positive ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
LED.
Yeah, LEDs.
Yeah, because I would do that like for the brake lights and things that are safety items. But when I change all the marker lights on the Spitfire, I changed really everything except the headlights, of course, and the turn signals. I could swear the engine idled better. Yeah, it was noticeable.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So as far as the overdrive, there's new oil in it. If you overfill it, is that going to have an effect? Because I think put a little bit too much oil in.
Oh, it should have leaked out.
It hasn't yet.
No, it shouldn't. It should still work a little bit overfull.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right.
Well, the other thing is you're in the greater Boston area, Mike. Is
yes.
Go see Bob Abbott.
Yeah.
There's one thing that could be affecting that overdrive is the safety switch that's on the side of the gear shift.
Yes.
If it's out of adjustment, then you could get an intermittent overdrive operation.
The safety switch that's the one that's on the gear shift that tells it that it's in third or fourth gear.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about that because even when the car is sitting still, or maybe it was when I was running, but with the clutch depressed, when I went into third or fourth, I could hear the solenoid clicking.
You're hearing the isolation switch clicking.
Ah, okay. So because it sounded like it came from the solenoid area. So that's why I assumed it was solenoid. The isolation.
Actually, no, you are hearing the solenoid. When you're moving the gear lever back and forth, you're closing and opening the interrupter switch, as they call it, third, fourth interrupter switch. But the overdrive can still be in because you haven't punched the throttle to release the hold circuit. Read the manual.
Okay. Or punch the throttle. All right. Yeah. I'll play with it. Otherwise, I just won't use the overdrive.
Anyway, guys, I've got a hockey game to watch, so I'll bid you good night.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Well, thank you all for your. So our next call will be on Monday, July 8th. Hopefully, everyone has a good holiday period time of that, and getting out a chance to use your Heelys. So, thank you all. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Peter.
Thank you. You bet. Bye bye.
Thanks, Peter.
You bet, Bruce. Thank you.